Welcome back, everyone. So, my name is Harifa Siregar, or what people call me Pai. So my role exactly is the moderator for the keynote session. But unfortunately, Ibu Marike Bumbergen have something, and Ari is going with Bu Marike, and so I have to do a double role as a MC and moderator. Yeah. But we would start with our keynote session. We have 3 keynote speakers, Ibu Ira, Pak Johanes Widodo, Pak JW, and Pak Bambang Sugiharto. And we would like to welcome our first keynote speaker, Dr. Ira Adriati, an art historian specializing in the study and research of pre-modern Indonesian aesthetics. Her work includes in-depth analysis of the symbolic significance of traditional Indonesian boat ornaments and comprehensive research on indigenous textile traditions. She has also conducted significant investigations into the statues situated within the ITB environment. I now invite Bu Ira, Dr. Ira Andrianti, to have your keynote speaker session. Please.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Kartini Day, therefore, on this occasion, I'm wearing kebaya. First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity given to me to speak at the seminar, Imagining Modernity, Colonial Archives, and the Reimaginations of Arts Pedagogy and Cultural Knowledge. My presentation is entitled Cultural Bridge, the presence of traditional artifacts at FSRD ITB. The important point of today's discussion present by the committee is about slide 2, traditional artifacts at the College of Modern Fine Art. Why are traditional artifacts part of the collection? Second, why is the existence of traditional artifacts questionable? And last, is there a connection between traditional artifacts and modern art education? These are the questions I will try to address in the next slide. Okay. If we look at how the ITB building was designed, history of ITB building architecture, the initial ITB building was built with a concept that respects Indonesian traditional culture. The ITB building is based on the sacred assets of Mountain Tangkuban Perahu and the surrounding mountains. The roof of the ITB building is an adaptation of a traditional Sundanese house. This shows that the founders of ITB really pay attention to local culture. Okay, next. Okay, in the following image, we can see this concept applied. Okay. This is the main building, and north is Tangkuban Perahu. And in garden, we can look mountain in Bandung. Actually, we don't know for sure whether the traditional artifacts in ITB are the initiative of the founder of ITB Fine Arts. The assumptions that could be the basis for the presence of the artifact is slide 4. Next. Okay. Founders of ITB Fine Arts, Rice Boulder and Simon Miller, placed traditional artifacts in the campus environment. We will think the view that the School of Fine Art is an art museum, artifacts as real learning medium for students, The awareness that Indonesian society will not be separate from its traditions. Okay. In the past, these artifacts were placed in front of the classroom of the fine art office. As a student at the time, I didn't feel any strangers in seeing Hindu, Buddhist statues side by side with Greek and Roman statues. Okay, next. Indonesian traditional art artifacts. FSRD has an important collection of artifacts that show the peak of glory of the late Hindu-Buddhist period in Indonesia. Panji statues from Seloklir Temple Mount Penanggungan. According to Lydia Kiffen, there are only 2 Panji statues in Indonesia. The Panji statues from Seloklir is an achievement of Indonesian nation in finding its identity at the end of the Hindu-Buddhist period in Indonesia. During the colonial period, the cultural products of Indonesia or Nusantara have become the attentions of foreign explorers, missionaries, and researchers. Okay, next. This is Senoklir, Panji from Senoklir. This is character or concept from Indonesian culture and different from India. The story about how make a best man. Next, okay. Indonesian traditional artifacts become the attentions of foreign students who come to Indonesia for documenting, researching, and publishing about their research. This shows that they admire and consider the results of Indonesian culture, which has its own uniqueness that they don't find in Europe. Okay. Next. Indonesian art researchers and writers. As a sample, but important in Indonesian history, Thomas wrote Raffles. She researched about statuta and culture in West Java, Central Java, and East Java. Clary Holt, very important and inspired teacher or student or people in Indonesia to study about Indonesian art story. Denis Lombard from France and very comprehensive to conclude about Indonesian art. And Lydia Kiffen, the names above are only a small part of the writers on Indonesian culture and art. They conduct careful field research using anthropological methods. And they analyze in detail, understand the meaning of the artwork. Okay, next. This is Claire Holt and this book. Okay, next. And this is Lydia Kevin with her book, her book about Panji or figure bertopi. Okay. Next. And this is Indonesian art historian. There are Professor Wiyoso Yudo Saputro, historiography of Indonesian fine art from prehistoric period to Islamic period. And Dr. Primadi Tabrani, analysis method visual language or bahasa rupa. And the last, Jacob Soemardja, analysis method paradox aesthetic of aesthetic paradox. The three important figures who teach at FSRD ITB. Professor Wiyoso made an analysis of the process of the early of Hindu-Buddhist culture into Indonesia, reinforcing what has been written by Clary Holt. we also state that the Indonesian nation eventually brought back local religious or local genius views that differentiate Hinduism and Buddhism in India from Indonesia, showing creative abilities and courage to determine things that are in accordance with local views and local needs. Professor Primadi Tabrani intelligently found a method of analyzing prehistoric and traditional artwork with language of visual or bahasa rupa. As an Indonesian, he dared to come up with a method that is uniquely Indonesian. Professor Jacob Soemardja, with cultural and geographical approach, has found a method of reading paradox aesthetics of aesthetica paradox, which is applicable to every region in Indonesia and is still used by Indonesian society today. These figures receive a Western education, but were able to analyze the uniqueness and perspective of Indonesian society on art. Okay, next. This is Professor Primadi Tabrani, middle Professor Wiyoso, and left is Professor Jacob Soemardja. Views on the early establishment of art education in ITB, that's magazines of 1915s discussed the importance of traditional arts. Orientate discussed traditional art to modern art in Indonesia, and Cultural News Indonesia discussed the development of culture in Indonesia. Okay, next. Art in traditional society. Art is a manifestation of spiritual views and activities. Art as a medium to achieve salvation in life, in the world, and in the afterlife. Creating artwork is part of worship activities. Next. This is traditional weapon from Boti. If we look, this weapon is art or artistic only, but for Boti people, this weapon is building medicine for people. Boti is NTT, Indonesia. Okay, the next. This is ship from Biak, Wyron ship. Use many motifs in this ship, but every motif will give spirit for the ship and sailor with this Mansusu or Wyron ship. Okay, this motif from symbol upper world and under world for Biak people, and joined for upper world and lower world to came a spirit. Okay, next. The importance of traditional arts. Indonesian people need to understand Indonesian traditional arts. Traditional arts are still reflect in the lives of Indonesian society to this day. Okay, next. This is pinisi from South Sulawesi. If we look this color or motif of pinisi, only two color, white This is replica for cosmology, people from Bugis. This is visual about upper world, lower world, and middle world. The motif is not changed until now because it is spirit for sailor in south of Sulawesi. Okay, next. And today we made a ceremony for this occasion. Okay. Okay. Next. Traditional arts course in ITB. Since 1957, the story of ancient Indonesian fine art has been a course at Faculty of Fine Arts and Design, ITB. The lecturer for this course is Professor Wiyoso Yudo Saputro. Until now, the history of ancient Indonesian fine arts has been a compulsory course in the Fine Arts Study program of ITB. Based on data from FSRD students of class of 1957, they have received courses in the history of ancient Indonesian art. This became one of the initiators of Professor Primadi to research the visual language method. In the early days of the Master of Fine Arts program in 1992, the students, this on Indonesian traditional arts were very dominant, approaching 18% of the 80% of the total research themes. According to the research by Almira Ira and Nuning in 2023, it was stated that the interest of generation Y and Z students remains high in researching traditional arts. Currently, 40% of bachelor theses today research discuss Hindu Buddhist art. Okay, next. Back to the roots. Sujoko, professor at FSRD, after returning from Ohio, United States, realized the importance of Indonesian traditional arts. The traditional art of Indonesia were the only authentic art of Indonesia. Indonesia modern art needed to be based on the aesthetics of traditional art. Some lecturers of FSRD ITB during their education in the United States or Europe in the early days were required to find their identity as Indonesian artists. Professor Ade Piros recalled his childhood in Aceh when his mother embroidered the kiswah, which was an acculturation of Aceh's traditional art with Islam. Until then, Islamic calligraphy in the context of modern painting became his identity. Sanento Yuliman raises the view of upper and lower art, which is related to how the quality of traditional art that has high aesthetic value needs to be raised and studied. Okay, next. Traditional art for contemporary design. Ade Piros founded the Design and Art Gallery Desenta in 1973. Desenta researched on local art from in Indonesia and made an archive about traditional art in Indonesia. Desenta incorporated elements of traditional arts into contemporary design. The existence of Desenta is a reflection of how the art college at ITB realized the importance of promoting traditional art in modern life. Next. Traditional art in Indonesian fine art books. Discussion of Indonesian art always begins with traditional art. Clary Holt, Art Indonesia Continuous and Change, or Hildawati in Indonesian Heritage Visual Art. Wiyoso Yudhisuputra, Treasures of Indonesian Art Traditions. Modern Indonesian art is rooted in the conceptual views of the traditions of its artists. As we write about book, soul, spirit, and mountain preoccupation of contemporary Indonesian painter. Discussion about Indonesian modern art or Indonesian contemporary art can never be separate from the roots of tradition. The books above show this, as we write shows how Indonesian artists are never separate from their cultural roots. Next, Indonesian modern until contemporary artists. Some artists use traditional art as a source of inspiration. In modern art period, taking inspiration from the concept of traditional art, like Ahmad Sadali, G. Siddhartha, Sri Hadi Sudarsono, Ade Pirus, Haryadi Swadi, T. Sutanto, Ena Pirus, or Hei Bakmun. And early contemporary art period, taking the perspective of traditional society, especially Java, as the concept of their work, we can look in Hendrawan Rianto artwork. Contemporary art is incorporating concept or elements of tradition into their work, Tisna Sanjaya, Tito Ruby, or Radi Arwinda. Okay, next. This is Ade Pirus with his artwork. Okay, next. And this is Hendrawan Rianto in National Museum on 2001, and see his theme about culture padi with Dewi Sri, and this is Haryadi and Radi. They inspiration from Cirebon tradition. Okay. Next. Inspiration, studying traditional arts become a foundation of knowledge for students about the concept of original Indonesian art. Increase nationalism because they realize the nobility of Indonesian traditional arts. Become an inspiration in creating words to find the ideologue of the work. In fact, artists who are successful in the international arena are artists who promote Indonesian traditional arts. Enhance research on Indonesian traditional arts and advance Indonesian traditional art. Even Henry Matisse used Indonesian ikat weaving as inspiration for his work. So it would be strange if Indonesian artists were not interested in traditional artworks. Okay. Next. This is Matisse, and on left is ikat collection Matisse, an inspiration for his artwork. Okay. Next. Finally, whatever the reasons that underlie the founders of this school in collecting prehistoric, traditional, and Hindu-Buddhist artifacts, in reality, they are a bridge between past history that leads to future of the FSRD ITB academic community. Okay. Thank you for your attention. Okay, next. This is the made cotton in Boti society. And this is from Boti. Thank you.
Ibu Ira, thank you so much. It's been a very inspiring speech. I have questions, but probably later because we have two other more keynote speakers. But it's been very interesting to understand or how Ibu Ira posed it, that we should, contemporary Indonesian artists should take the inspiration from the traditional art, or traditional art should be the foundation for this day arts. So I would like to invite our second keynote speakers, Dr. Johanes Widodo, or Pak JW, Associate Professor and Director of the Tuntan Cheng Lock Center for Asian Architectural and Urban Heritage in Malacca, Malaysia. And he also serves as the Executive Editor of the Journal of Southeast Asian Architecture at the National University of Singapore. Pak JW, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. A bit ridiculous to speak English to all people who speak Indonesian here. But it's okay. Don't worry, because probably there's people online who don't understand Bahasa Indonesia. And second, it's very difficult to speak during the very sleepy hours. Okay, Ibu Ira just now talking about the inspirations, and also mentions about art and statues and all these artworks. My background is an architect, so I will use architecture as an example to put up a points. I will not talking about inspirations, I'm talking about positions. What is our positions as educators, as a school that will prepare the next generations? What kind of ideology that we want to give them to create, to form their mindset? And second, I'm not representing Tan Cheng Lock Center or NUS, I'm representing ICOMOS Indonesia, because ICOMOS Indonesia is part of these consortiums, although nobody gives a talk this morning, but it's okay. But I think ICOMOS is very important because we also representing a group of scholars that talking about the heritage management from the very dynamic perspectives. We are not looking into the past, but we also looking into the future. Okay, so my title, I hope it's a bit provocative to make you wake up. Decolonizing Eurocentrism and Embracing Modernities with small m. So I put modernities with small m and s, plural, not big M. And then embracing democratic mindsets in Indonesian arts and architectural discourse and pedagogy. When a state swing into fascism, or swing into leftist or rightist, I think education is become very important. We want to put up a generations, create a generations that able to make change, or generations who only able to follow status quo. Okay, next. And this is the meaning of education. The meaning of education is empowerment, because all students become the leaders tomorrow. So if you see hashtag kabur dulu, is this the kind of mentality that we want to put into our younger generations if the situation in Indonesia is not very promising? And I took this from MAN, the ensemble decoration. MAN is Modern Asian Architecture Networks with small m, because precisely when we set up this network in 2001, yeah, including Bu Hasti is here, Pak Wijaya also involved in this movement, we are fighting the big M, which is the Eurocentric modernism, that consider our buildings built during the modern era is not fit into the so-called the database of modern architecture. Next. And we face a real crisis now. Next, just put everything. Ideological fanatism, ignorance, cultural amnesia, economic greed, social divide, unsustainable practices, pseudo-sustainability, or greenwashing, ethical deficiency. And you look into this map, we still think that this is a normal map, although this is abnormal. The northern hemisphere was stretched 3 times bigger. The equator was shrink 3 times smaller. So you can see that Greenland still belongs to Denmark, not America. It's much bigger than Africa, which is ridiculous. You see Indonesia is a tiny there compared to England or Holland up there. Why? Because of the projection system. We are deceived by the cartographer to believe that the northern hemisphere is much bigger and you are smaller. In reality, it's not. Are we still call Middle East Middle East? Why not West Asia? Why we still use the framework of the Dutch and the British? Because our Middle East is Hawaii, and our Far East is California, not China. So in use of language and terminology, we are still very much colonized. We are not independent yet. We still look into this map as a normal. And we look into that situations, that is not a Photoshop, that's a real social divisions in the city. You can see in Bandung, it's very easy. You can just look into the, whatever, near Kampung, in Ciamplas, there's a hotel there. And then from the hotel, you look into the valley. Yeah? You can see very easily the gated community. This is crisis that is real. Okay, next. And in terms of art and also architecture, many schools still use the book by Bannister Fletcher, which is very offensive to us. If you look into the content, the non-historical styles below that, Indian, China, Japan, and so on, and Asia is all down there. And up there, in the tree of architecture, this is all the Western architecture. And if a university still keep this in the library, don't throw this book or burn this book away, and replace by, for example, the Global History of Architecture by Frank de Kaching, that use the more global and equal maps, then there's something must be wrong with our educations. Next. And we still believe in Vitruvius. Soundness, utility, beauty, yeah, Fermitas, Utilitas, Venustas. Are we also teaching our students with the Vastu Sastra, with the Indian principles of architecturing? Yes, we have the book by Mangunwijaya, Vastu Citra, for so long. But is this become the main textbook for our students? Or still secondary reading? Why are we still teaching Vitruvius? And if we embrace Vitruvius, that's fine. But sometimes we forgot that Vitruvius put human at the middle. It's human-centric design. When you teach Vitruvius, are you really reading the 10 books from page 1, chapter 1 to chapter 10? If you read chapter 1, it's about educations. And if you read educations according to Vitruvius, it's not about Firmitas, Utilitas, Venustas, but it's about educations. And it's about ethics. So I think sometimes we're just too lazy to read because there is no intentions to show our students about the alternative. This is not alternative truth, like Donald Trump always used. But this is the real truth. For us in Asia, we look into the building practice in Bali, in Java, in the traditional building vernacular architecture, we are not making form, but we are providing wellness, happiness, prosperity to people. It's about architecturing, according to Romo Mangun. It's about verb, not noun. But sometimes we thought that statue is a form. That's why the Dutch so easily committed crime of robbing that from the site, uprooted that things, and put it here, somewhere, in the museums, and even here. Why? Because we forgot that that is religious object. This is sacrilegious. If you are Catholic, can you imagine that someone play around with monstrance that taken from the altar in the church, and then put it in the school, and then they say, let's analyze this as an object of art. I was very upset when I went to Champa, UNESCO World Heritage Site. In Champa, you see a lot of temples, and the symbolism in Champa is about fertility. There are a lot of yoni and linga. And these tourists giggling, hugging the penises. They thought that this is pornographic. This is cool to be posted in the internet. In Borobudur, the tourists climb up and then look into the headless Buddha, and then stand behind that and to replace the head of Buddha with his head, just for Instagram. This is not ethical, and this is sacrilegious. And if the people who belong of that religion are angry, they have the right to kill those people, right? You see how this extremism happen everywhere. But luckily the Buddhist and the Catholic is quite, don't care about all these things. But they have the very right to be angry. Yes, we are doing this morning ritual. And the meaning of that ritual, I think, is very important. Is to open up our mind so the spirit of the statue, represented the statue, come back to us. Although it's already gone for how many hundred years because of the uprooted from the context. And hopefully we can open our third eyes. That's why you put something here, to open the third eyes. The conscience. That we need to do something to repent. Back to fitrah. Back to the original intent of the statue. Okay, next. So the context of us is very diverse. I always use this map, Mediterranean Sea of Asia. I refuse the word South China Sea. It's not belong to China. It's not even belong to Philippines or Indonesia, whatever. This is the Mediterranean, a middle sea that belong to everywhere, that the cross-fertilizations of culture civilization happen, that we have this diversity, hybridity, inclusivity, interconnectivity as values. And also, these values affecting our mindset, our attitudes, and our value system. And I think this is the most important thing that we should tell our students about the spirit of tolerance. Yeah, although some friends are Muslim, they're following the Hindu rituals. Although that statue actually is not Hindu Bali. That statue actually is a Hindu Jawa. And Hindu Bali is Hindu Buddhist, right? It's a mix. But it's okay, because this is our nature of openness. Okay, next. And then we look into this kind of real representations. This is, any guess, where is this? It's not Hindu. It's Ganjuran in Jogja. It's near Bantul. It's a Catholic church. It's built in 1930s. The priest, no, not the priest, the owner is a Dutch, he's a Catholic. He want to build a chapel and a church based on, well, the faith, right? It's a missionary faith. So he asked Van Ooyen, one of the architects, to build the traditional church in Roman church. But I don't take that picture because it's demolished already and then replaced by more traditional Javanese church now. But I'm more interested to this chapel, a Sacred Heart of Jesus chapel. So he commissions a sculptor to make a statue of Jesus that can be understood by the local. So he went around and found that, and that is the statue of Sacred Heart of Jesus. Just like Buddha statue in Mendut, in Prambanan, And just sit down, and then with the heart at the middle, the seat is supposed to be a petal, flower, like something that is used in, but this has become like Holy Spirit. and is put in the chapel, and the chapel take a form of Hindu temple. And on the top of the Hindu temple, you can see there is a cross. Then, the designer is also a Muslim. See that, well, this is a holy ground, so before you enter the holy ground, you have to take wudu. So this is wudu, to wash the leg, to wash the hand. But then, of course, being Catholic, right? Somebody, oh, miracle happened, I drink that water and I get cured. So now it's become famous like Lourdes. People taking water to bring it home, and of course, sometimes it happened, right? So it's become like a mixed pilgrimage that people who come here doesn't have to be Catholics. And they sit on the floor, and then if you look into the Mass performed during the celebrations of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the procession is like processions like in Jogja. With during the bulan puasa, then the priest sits on the ground and not wearing Catholic attire, but Johanes attire with blankon, and sit on the ground. And that happened in 1932, long before the Second Vatican Council, talking about modernism. So the spirit of modernity and modernisms has already happened, because it's break away from the so-called the cocoon and divisions of individualities, but embracing diversity and translate it into something that is totally not present in the so-called the traditional architecture before. But what the West say about this? Oh, syncretism. This is the fundamentalists say. This is against the purity of the Catholic teaching. Well, human is like that. You have left and right, but this still exists until today. Even some of the people there producing wayang, and wayang wahyu. I have gunungan with the Eucharist at the center, and vine to replace the tree of life. I have Jesus Christ like a wayang with a snake. They still make it. Right? So this is the reality. The cultural reality is like this. If you look into Sekaten, for example, in Jogja, even the design of the mosque, Masjid Gede in Jogja, you look that the Qiblat is not towards Makkah. Only because Ahmad Dahlan came back from study. And then he found out actually the Masjid Agung, Masjid Gede in Jogja, not facing Qiblat. He didn't demolish it. He just bring in a piece, a paint with the friends at night, and then painted the lines, the new shaft inside. Right? The acceptance of diversity by layering, by hybridizing. Okay, next. Yeah, so this is the rituals. Catholic rituals that is look like skatenan. You have a gunungan, that is the priest celebrating Mass, and that is they carry the monstrance, and then during the processions, and that is while people at night praying in the chapel. Next. So Asian modernisms and modernities is represented with this statement, okay? So in 2001, we just open all. We call this what happened here, because we declared it in Macau 2001. We affirm Asia as dynamic source of our identities and recognize the numerous experiences that we share with the rest of the world. We have industrialization, urbanization, westernization, colonization, decolonization, nation building, and this happened at the same time, not linear. And modern Asia is not developed in the vacuum, just like what Bannister Fletcher said. It's wrong. But through sustained interaction with the West, which has as a constant present in our collective consciousness, and this experience, the world unite us as Asians. The history of dealing with the West, with our neighbors and with ourselves, It manifested in the myriad forms of our architecture. The history of modern architecture in Asia is the history of how Asians have become modern. Again, we are talking about process, not buildings. Okay, next. Look what happened when the Dutch came from the Four Seasons country, first time to Batavia. They just transplanted the European typology. It's not a Chinese courtyard. This looks like a house in Amsterdam. Very narrow. Why? Because of the Dutch taxation system. So they tax people based on the width, not on the length. The roof is very steep, although we don't have snow. Right? Why the roof is steep in Holland is because there's snow, so they let the snow fall down quite quickly. If it's flat, then the snow will stay and then the roof collapse. Then there is a chimney, which is not a chimney because we don't need chimney, but it looks like chimney. And then the window is very high. So what happened when people live in this? Suffering. High humidity, very hot. Then what happened next? And okay, not just that, superimposition of orders. This is the Batavia, Jayakarta before 1619, with alun-alun, with all these Chinese settlements, whatever. And then the idea of Simon Stevin, based on the St. Augustine book, the city of God, was transplanted and become into that Batavia. Very similar, right? So this is by force. Okay, next. Then what happened is adaptations, climatic adaptations. Look into the veranda. Yes, the roof is still steep, but now it's become slightly slanted because it's Chinese built it. But still, the roof is still very high. You still have some feature like chimney, but actually it's not. Yeah, it's like more Chinese ornaments. But most important is protection against the tropical rain. Is by creating veranda. Next. And then after adaptations, acclimatizations. Living in the tropics is not easy. Just move the life from the living room to veranda. Very breezy. It's just like our building in Itebe here. Walk around the veranda, very cool, cross ventilations. So life moved from inside to outside, and then the so-called veranda is getting bigger. And because it's getting bigger, it's become like more like social space. So it's hybridization happened in the form. Okay, next. And this is hybridizations. This is a Chinese captain house in Palembang, Indonesia. The plan is following a Chinese courtyard house, but the form itself is Rumah Palembang, Rumah Panggung, stilt house. But if you look into the space structure, yes, you have a family altar at the middle, but the subdivisions, I don't know whether it's vernacular or whether it's Western, but you look into the facade, you see this is look like a European house. So we are very inclusive. It doesn't matter, it's not eclecticism. But this is something that we embrace. If you look into the city like Malacca or whatever, the builder coming from different background. The carpenter is from Canton, Chinese. So maybe the craftsman is from Malay. And then the bricklayers, maybe some of the Chinese contractors as well. So they put all this effort together into this kind of production. Next. Then coexistence, right? As I said, this is masjid in Jogja. This is done. That new stuff by Ahmad Dahlan with the new technology by determining the correct direction of the compass without demolitions, but the plan itself still following Hindu, Gapuram, Mandapa, and the main temple. The mihrab is shifted. Then when you enter, there is a water. So force non-Muslim actually to do wudu by walking on the water. And then you have the gamelan sekati during sekatenan. This is for missions. So syiar, to attract people to come in, although you are not Muslims. Then Sultan was very angry to Ahmad Dahlan. They burned the mosque, Langgar Kidul. But Ahmad Dahlan didn't retaliate against Sultan. He rebuilt the Langgar Kidul, but interestingly, he has an opportunity to align the direction towards Mecca. But it's not. He's still following the direction of the Sultan, of the palace, of the north-south axis of Merapi and Segoro Kidul. But in front of the mihrab, there is a white sign. There is a drawing by his hand showing the correct directions towards Qiblat. So this is the spirit, the ethics that has inside Ahmad Dahlan. Even in Kauman in Jogja, they never follow the Sultan faithfully because they are Islam. But they still become the guardians of the great mosque. Even there is a langgar perempuan, and the imam is Nyi Ahmad Dahlan, which is not very Islamic, but it's happened there. Right? Next. Then modernizations came. Colonial imperial style, tropis in this modern, like Sultan and Skutaraja. You know, the Bruin built this with the plan is cross. And this is given to the Muslim community there. And of course later the Acehni is not very happy with this, and then add another four cupola and make it square. Why? Rukun Islam. Right? Concept came later to justify the form. It's not from the beginning. And then, when it's already become 5, the mimbar was given by a minister from Cabinet 100 Minister of Sukarno, a Chinese, Ui Chutat, gave the mimbar inside. And it's okay. Ui Chutat is not Muslims. It doesn't mean that the mimbar is become like haram, right? It's okay, you know. And then we still keep all this part. Then it's not just that, yeah? We have the sugar law, international trading port, railway network, modern trading city, Europeanization, so many things happening during the modernization process. Not linear like what Bannister Fletcher say. Not like the European style. This is not about style. This is about the entire change of the structural change of the community. Next. Then, of course, what happened in Bandung, because of the ethnic politics, we have the small-scale housing development, public health, hygiene, rationalization, private and housing, and tropical garden city and new suburb thanks to the change in Europe, the socialist agenda. And that happened in Bandung because Bandung was projected as the new capital under this new way of life. You're very lucky, but how many people understand this? Because most people only fascinated with the Art Deco buildings, with Gedung Sate, with Hotel Homan. But how about the social agenda? Nobody talks about it. Okay, next. Then even if we talk about architecture, we have Karsten, Schumacher, we have Villa Isola, but look what Berlage said in 2023. Over there, modern architecture also constructively started with purification of practically the same grounds as in the motherland. Motherland means Europe. Yeah? The traditional classical form has been replaced by the realizations of a more rational idea. Even Berlage said what happened here is not irrational. What happened here, that's hybridity, is very rational. And rationalism is the basis of modernism. Next. Then, of course, Henry Maclean Pond. Maclean Pond was born in Indonesia. Then, he teach here. He went to Trawulan. Then he built this Posarang Church. Even the plan, you can see in the Posarang Church, a Greek auditorium at the bottom, now it's become parking lot. And on the top, the Borobudur, right, Borobudur terraces, which is the graveyard. And then the church that consists of 3 parts like a Hindu temple. And there is at the middle of the courtyard, there is a Pohon Beringin, banyan tree. Very local, but it is not vernacular architecture. This is very rational architecture because you combine with these mathematical calculations. Okay, next. Let's see. Helen Jessup says, the architecture of Karsten and Maclean Pond indeed went very far towards establishing a style springing genuinely from indigenous idiom, drawing on local structural and symbolic elements, while making provisions for the technical, economic, and social needs of a changing country in the changing world. This is very modern. This is all modernity. Next. So, during the Japanese occupations, Maklenpon was put in prison, not prison, interniran, in Cimahi. And then after that, it's finished the war. He couldn't find a job in ITB, THS that time, and he have to go back to Holland. Then he teach in TU Delft. And TU Delft, he established this 1953, Maklenpon Stichting Foundations. All this, including the calculations. But 2 years before, architect Freyoto met Pon in Den Haag and talking with this old man. And Maklenpon shared the principles of the reverse inverted Gothic principles, the mathematical calculations to Freyoto. So Maklenpon experimental works in Trowulan and Pusarang given attention by him, and he became the one who invented the tensile structure. So who said that our modernity is influencing by Europe? We influencing the modern architecture of the world. The Pusarang Church, Museum Trowulan, ITB, Aula Barat, Aula Timur, this influencing the global architecture. But whoever dare to write that? No one ever write that, because those who write the history of architecture is not us, but people from their side. They are blind to this. Okay? And Freyoto won the Pritzker Prize. He just passed away a few years ago, thanks to this. So you see the direct correlations that we are not dictated by the West. We also help to define the West. Bruno Taut went to Kyoto, Katsura, and then he influencing the Bauhaus movement later and the modern architecture. Frank Lloyd Wright spent much time in Japan, and the Japanese architecture influencing Frank Lloyd Wright. So there is a cross-fertilization. There is no East or West. The world is round. So for those who still make this dichotomizing East and West actually is very out of date, if you look into this example. But we have to fight the ideology that we still believe that the West is dictating us. Next. Even publications, the Komomo Journal already recognized modernism in Asia Pacific, modern Southeast Asia, tropical architecture in the modern diaspora. Even the most conservative or the founder of MOMO, modern movement, is already changed their mindset. Next. And we already initiated several programs here. Infantry, Maseana, modern Asian architecture in ASEAN. 2016, talking about Catalyst, pioneer of modern Asian architecture. And we did the conference in Hanoi. 2017, about social agenda, modern living in Southeast Asia, conference in Jakarta. Materiality, environment, and economic viability. And this book has been out physically, and I think some of us also, I don't know whether you are contributing to this, but it will be available for free for download. Next. And more is, because even from Germany, Art Plus, contested modernities, post-colonial architecture, identity and construction. So the world is already talking about us, but we are keep quiet. Not many, especially the educational institute, to use all this material as part of the curriculum. Next. And this is from the local writer. Non-West Modernism Past Our Architecture and Modernities by Chang Jiatui and William Lim. Genealogical Tropical Architecture, Chang Jiatui. There's Imran Tajuddin, also write this Southeast Asian Modern Architecture. And all those books, even Silaban, used by Setiadi Sopandi. And then it's doing also with other architects as well. So this is an encouraging sign that we all start to become the producer of knowledge, not just the consumer of knowledge. I think this is the thing that this grant, the 5 years grant, is a lot of money, especially in this crisis. Very difficult to get money. This is easy money. But we have to be good in using the money. We have to be able to produce something that will be able to change not just additional knowledge, but change the paradigm, and hopefully also change the entire curriculum of education and art and architecture here. Next. So the fundamentals of architecture education, now I'm talking about Vitruvius. He said in 10 book of the chapter 1, Education of an Architect, you can change the word architects to art or artist or design, right? It follows, therefore, that architects who have aimed at acquiring manual skill without scholarships have never been able to reach a position of authority commensurate with the efforts, where those who relied on the theories and scholarships were chasing the shadow, not the substance. But those who possess a true knowledge of both, like men armed with all points, attain the object sooner than carry authority with them. So it's about prophecy. The word professional, professors, and prophet actually come from the same etymology. To tell the truth with authority. And authority came from knowledge. And knowledge have to be supported by ethics. Okay, next. Let him be educated, skilled with pencils, psychomotoric, instructed in geometry, knowledgeable in history, have followed the philosopher with attentions. We have to learn from you. Understand music, possess some knowledge of medicine, be familiar with the opinions of the jurist, and be acquainted with astronomy and the theory of heavens. This is what designers means. It's not just form making, not just about aesthetics. Next. This is very important, for no work can be rightly done without honesty and incorruptibility. Let him not be grasping, not let his mind be preoccupied with the idea of receiving prerequisites. Prerequisites mean money. Instead, let him maintain his position with dignity by cherishing a good reputation. I think this is equal to Hippocrates' oath for the doctors. Right? This should be the creed for architects. Not Venustas, whatever. Just forget about that. Just go back into the basic. Right? Next. I believe that men have no right to claim themselves architects or artists or designers hastily without having climbed the steps of these studies from boyhood and thus nurtured by the knowledge of many arts and sciences, having reached the heights of the holy ground of architecture. Next. So this is my last slide about contemporaneity and continuity. So what's now? How could we establish a contemporary planning and design that is based on truth and beauty and relevant to our history and our present situations? I posed these questions to that statue. What will happen to that statue? Now we have technology to produce 3D scanning, 3D printing exactly like that replica, make replica. Then return those statues to the original place. If you can't find it, use the research money to find where is the statues came from. Then, after you return that statue, you have to educate the local people to take care of that. You need conservation management plan. You need institutions. And this is the job that can be done by ICOMOS Indonesia, for example, to empower them. And for this technology, how to scan, how to make 3D printing, this ITB and the partners. How to use the replica for re-educations, how to change the mindset in the curriculum. That's the philosopher. So we have to use this money wisely, set up a clear target over the next 5 years, so we can really using this money well. Thanks to the Dutch, which has considered it as their repentance, and will do a good job to make them happier. Because at the end of the day, God will forgive them for all this crime. But if we don't do this, let us be cursed, because we never do any good job. Sorry, I'm just joking. Thank you.
Thank you so much. By the way, amazing speech. I sense a lot about rationality, how then modern and primitive makes sense in education and things like that. And there's a lot to unpack basically, and there's very strict challenges for us in the consortium about what can we produce from this project. Thank you so much again, and I sincerely apologize for not mentioning you as part of the ICOMOS earlier. And I will invite our third keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Bambang Sugiharto from Fakultas Filsafat or Faculty of Philosophy, Universitas Katolik Parahyangan, and is renowned for experience in cultural philosophy and postmodernism paradigm with over 35 years of teaching experiences. Holds a doctorate from Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Italy. Prof. Bambang, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, it is quite interesting listening to the two speeches because, yeah, to me it was quite insightful. But my field is philosophy, so I can't talk very much in details like Johanes Widodo concerning history. But I would like to talk more on the basic orientation of our art education related to our heritage from the past. Next, please. Yeah, I'm rather confused, first of all, when I was offered to give this speech. Confused about the basic orientation of our seminar. Is it oriented to the past, or to the present, or to the future? Because our context is different. If we are focusing on the past, then we will talk very much about history, colonialism, even tradition, as was just mentioned by the two speakers, Hindu, Buddhism, Islam, or perhaps we are tracking the origin of our culture. But that's one thing. This is if we focus on the past. But if we focus on the present, then this is our context today, which is post-history. That's what they call it, post-history. Now we use many post everything actually. Yes, post-history, post-colonial, post-tradition, even post-digital culture. Post only in the sense that our frame of reference today is not simply from the past, from history, not even from tradition. Because, you know, tradition, many functions of our traditions has been replaced or taken over by modern systems. In the past, tradition serves as a system of education, economic, well, you name it, everything, politics. But now it is already taken over by universal system of economy, of politics, science, and so on and so forth. So, you know, tradition is no more the predominant system that no more the predominant framework that shapes our culture. That is the thing. If we focus on today, neither either history from the West or our own history, is no more authoritative for our framework. Yes, and this post-digital, it says only that we don't talk anymore about the digital thing, but we take for granted that everything these days already digitized, let's say. So we talk in the post-digital era, culture, we talk more about the impact of this digital culture, of this inevitable digital culture. And most of all, if we focus on today, then what we are facing is this, aesthetic capitalism with its creative industry. This is what is in front of us today, the so-called creative industry. Even creativity is sold, becomes a commodity. And if we talk about the future, I think no one can tell what is going to happen, because the progress of technology is so exponential that no one can predict what is going to happen in the future. Okay, so these are some options of the context that we are going to talk about. Now, in detail, if we take the past, let's say, if we orient, or if our orientation is to the past, then are we re-articulating Western self-understanding in terms of its traces in Indonesia? I'm talking about the Dutch. Is this seminar for the sake of the Dutch self-understanding in terms of its traces in this country, or what? That is one possibility. Or tracking how far the West has shaped Indonesia's culture or art pedagogy. So this is also one option. But from our point of view, we can take this perhaps. If we orient to the past, then perhaps we are retrieving local wisdom from oblivion. I don't know which one is the aim, the purpose of this seminar. We have to discuss about this, I guess. Next, please. Now, if you focus to the present, it can be critical examination of the very concept of history and tradition itself. I guess what was talked about by Johanes Widodo is exactly this one. Which history, which tradition? So history in what sense? Tradition in what sense? Because if you talk about Nusantara, well, we have quite a lot of tradition. Which one? And in that way, we can also reimagine modernity. Modernity as plural. There are many kinds of modernity. Pak Johanes Widodo talked about this very excellently. There are many kinds of modernity. The thing is, you know, in terms of the West framework, everything should be neatly, meticulously defined. You know, modern means not traditional. Modern should be rational. Well, this is only one type, one version of modernity. I think modernity is any kind of effort to re-articulate ourselves in terms of, you know, the development of our civilization. A never-ending process of adaptation to the new things coming up in our environment. And there are many ways of adapting to these new challenges. Because even rationality, if the main point of modernity is how we use rationality, there are even many kinds of rationality. Many kinds of rationality. Because every ethnic group actually produces their own kind of knowledge, which is somehow rational in a way. Okay, so in this way we can reimagine modernity as plural. And also, in this way, also we can see culture as by nature a closed yet open and rational, relational system. So culture, I see it as never an isolated island. Culture is shaped and formed in relationship with other cultures. Every culture inspires other cultures. So there is no such thing as what was mentioned by Johanes, what is it? Syncretism, eclecticism. Every culture is always eclectic and always syncretic. What is unrealistic is seeing every culture as, the very sterile system. There has never been sterile culture like that. So if we focus on the present, we can see culture as it is a closed system, of course. It's like our body. Each of our bodies are, a closed system. That's why for someone, a certain food can cause allergic, while for others not. That means our body is basically a closed system. And yet, our body is also an open system. We eat from outside, we breathe the air from outside, and we associate with other people. That nurtures our psychology from outside. So is culture. Culture is nurtured by its relation with the outside. So it is an open and yet closed and relational. And today, most of all, we are facing this aesthetic capitalism. So our problem today is not simply Western framework of art or whatever, but capitalism, I guess. Even capitalistic tendency within our own culture. Capitalism is not only big companies. Our own tendency to capitalize everything, to make everything, to commodify everything is also a challenge for us to face. So this is aesthetic capitalism behind the so-called, creative industry. That is when we focus on the present. If we focus on the future, well, perhaps we have to see this, that cultures from all over the world are now intermingled. And we can see actually those cultures as unlimited resources we can harness. Why not? Why not? We can get inspiration from any culture. And in reality, we keep using other cultures' inspiration today. For instance, in the way we eat, we put any kind of foreign food these days. We eat baklava, we eat spaghetti, we eat whatever. So we can see all cultures today as unlimited resources we can harness, but we can make it, we can blend it, we can make it our own style, although it comes from others. Secondly, tradition is not so much objective data as possible interpretation of the past and of our collective unconsciousness. So if we think tradition as simply as a ready-made system, I don't think it is wise. Tradition is always open for new interpretation. And even tradition is possible interpretation. We can interpret tradition in many ways. Because, you know, even in every culture, there is this contestation of power. And this power, willy-nilly, they make a selection of what is considered deserve to be conserved and or to be thrown away. This depends on which power is predominant, is prevailing today. So tradition is a possible interpretation. We can interpret tradition in many ways. Thirdly, transcultural. This is also an option, I think, but in the sense that we can advance our culture that is being advanced, but by learning from others and as well as from our past. But the point is here, how to advance our culture by learning from others and from our own past. Okay, so fourthly, in this context, art education is a means of articulation, opening, and transformation of collective consciousness through conceptual images and interdisciplinary processes. So by this I mean that art making is not simply creating something beautiful, but as was mentioned by the previous speakers, it is a matter of enhancing our well-being, of enhancing the meaning of our lives, perhaps of our happiness. I actually don't really like the term happiness. Perhaps the meaning of lives, the significance of life, it's more worth chasing. Happiness is quite relative. We don't know what happiness actually is, but having a significant life, meaningful life, I guess it's worth pursuing. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Pak Bambang. And please stay here. And I would like to invite previous speakers, Pak Jewe and Bu Ira. We're going to have a small session of question and answer. So, there's many things coming to my mind about what the three of you have been talks. There's many things that I need to just like contemplate on and asking myself back and forth about the idea of being modern, the idea of being educated, and the idea of being a rational subject, a rational animal. But and I have a lot, and I certainly don't have time to ask all of my notes about it. But one thing striking from the talks is about Abu Ira speaks about how the traditional arts of Indonesia should be the foundation, should be the inspiration. Pak Jewe speaks about how it's not only the West mythologically says that inspiring the East but it's also the West is taking inspiration from the East, and it should be like more of a reciprocal ways of understanding the civilization and things like that. And Pak Bambang, as which standpoint that we want to see the past, the future, the present, or the future, because if all of the three stands is going to make us appreciate something and make us understand the position of ourselves as educator, as teacher, as students, and so on and so forth. But maybe my only question, I'm going to open the floor for the audience in case they have questions. One thing that I would like to know is the idea of cosmology, not cosmology, the knowledge, but the cosmos, how subject and object is interrelating to each other. Like Bu Ira says that in national Indonesian traditional culture, there's a cosmology, and Pak Jewe speaks also about the position differential between East and West, that Dutch is in this game, and they just put all of these buildings from the Dutch and from Europe suddenly is erected in Batavia, and Pak Bambang always said, because we are always try to imitate, in quotation mark, the position of ourselves, and when suddenly, voluntarily, maybe coming inside the aesthetic capitalism, which is very interesting because when Pak Bambang speaks, suddenly reminded to Mark Fisher, a British cultural writer, who says that it's easier to imagine the doomsday instead of imagining the end of capitalism. So it's kind of, and that's what Donald Trump has been. So I know it's okay. But so please, if you can just share your opinion about where is exactly the position of subject should be inside this project, or should we see ourselves as a modern subject, as we are coming from ITB, so we are more educated than people who are making the statue, or should we just acknowledge there's another cosmology, there's another power, there's another subject, or I hope it makes sense, please.
Okay, this is difficult questions because it's complicated. But I try to answer this very simple. Art, architecture, design, education is not value free. As long as we, as a subject, doing something, there must be a value behind that, agenda behind that. And now, if you're talking about ethics in design, are you going to use this in terms of to satisfy yourself? Egocentrism or altruism? You use this for gift to change something, with this advocacy, or it's just for enjoyment? And this is the value propositions for every subject in whatever we do. Even as a lecturer, are we going to teach this because I want to get the salary? Or even if there is no salary, if there's no pay, we still want to teach, right? So it's a matter of positioning. But again, I say we cannot claim that everything is value-free, just for the sake of beauty, for aesthetics. If we take the wrong positions, then the result will be disastrous. But what is right or wrong, right? So it's another judgment that we need to teach our children from very beginning. If they want to conserve something, I always tell my student, you just think very simple. Is it really what you need or is it what you want? If you can distinguish between need and want, that's it, you are okay. If you can't, then we fail. As simple as that.
Yeah, I take it that art is always a means of communication. And communication can serve also as a means of transformation, transforming to a higher level of awareness, consciousness, higher level of values perhaps. And to this extent, we ourselves, what you call subject, we are supposed to have our own worldview or cosmology, right? Which we are inherited from the past. But you know, the situation is always that we are facing other kind of cosmology, other kind of worldview. Between these worldviews, there is a contestation that we always have to face. Now, what do you have, or what power do you have to face this? Or even if you want to relate to this foreign cosmology, let's say, you must have something in the first place, you know. And this is our problem, even about our own worldview or cosmology, especially this generation, new generation. They are mostly ignorant. They are mostly ignorant about our own culture and things like that, you know. So, to that extent, we can easily be absorbed by others. And the ideal is how we can take inspiration, but also we can give inspiration to others. That's it.
Thank you. I think we must know about history, and we must use what artifact or anything from culture. We must use with it, and we must think it is for future generation. If we always wise to know about past or history, and we select that for our life today, and we prepare for future. I think it is perfect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Bu Ira, Pak Bambang, dan Pak Jewi. Okay, we still have like 15 to 20 minutes of this keynote speak session. So if anyone in the audience want to ask or give opinion or something like that, we still have times. Oh, Kiki? Oh, maybe if... Oh. So Bu Kiki, Pak Wijaya. Oh.
This is a simple, very simple response. So I completely agree that the notion of cultural blindness has significantly shaped our ways of seeing, right? And more specifically, our understanding of modernities with the plural form. This is not merely, I think that this is not merely theoretical concern for us, but something we have felt in our very beginning discussions with the team. As we stand in the very beginning of the research project, the possibilities still remain wide open, I guess. Very full of potential. In fact, I will jump into another question. In particular, that really struck me, especially, and I think especially urgent, is from Pak Bambang. The question of orientation is like BAM. For me, this is a fundamental issue. We have to. So where do we position ourselves? On what ground do we stand? And with which epistemic framework do we engage? That's also part of our discussion in this very solid 2 months of reading groups at the beginning of the research. Of course, we cannot expect to have this definitive answer at this stage, at this early stage. But this is precisely uncertainty that invite us to think more carefully and critically about the direction we wish to take. So this is not a question, but this thanks as a thank you for our keynote speakers. Yeah, that's all.
Ya, terima kasih. Thank you so much. I'm interested in what Pak Bambang mentioned about past, present, and futures. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, as mentioned, it was about orientation. Then I would say that it's about the choice that we must probably decide it in which way, in how low, how far you would go. No? So I would like to have your opinions, probably from Pak JW too, yeah, about your position. What will be the suggestion for the new coming generation, since uncertainty, flexibility is a daily routine? Thank you.
So as a guest, so maybe it's polite to introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Hastita Ekat, and I'm in this room today because I was the mentee of the students of two gurus, Ibu Frances and Pak JW, who invited me to learn about heritage, I think about 30 years ago. And I'm graduated from Pajajaran University and North Sumatra University, so nothing to do with ITB. But anyway, in the last 20 years, I've been living in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and working in cultural heritage. And I want to discuss a little bit all points that Johanes Widodo has mentioned, especially about daring to think about who we are as Indonesians. Of course, the Dutch has made a lot of mistakes, sins, which the consequences we still carry until today. Indonesia independence is 1945, so it's how many years ago? 79 years ago? Is that short or long period? And being an Indonesian that live in the former colony country for 20 years, what I found out about myself and being product of Indonesian education is to learn about critical thinking. We all have the same facilities, the same informations, the same opportunities. But do we dare to think critically about who we are and who we are as a nation also? And that's what I find it on the global level, lack of references from Indonesia. And this sounds very simple, but that is my daily challenge as Indonesian expert in Europe cultural heritage field and also in education field. If I refer to Indonesia, is a critical thinking. Indonesians, I think, absorb very well all the data and informations also from the past, but very, very limited references about critical thinking. I don't know, maybe it comes back to our culture of collective culture here, although we have all the freedoms and independence and sovereignty to be ourselves, but I think probably mentally we are not there yet. It is very difficult to admit this, but this is the reality. And being someone from outside, believe me, that's very strong impressions of Indonesia. Even not in Europe, even in Asia, or now I'm based also in the Middle East. It is, sometimes I wonder why Indonesia as the largest country in Southeast Asia is not heard, doesn't play significant role on international level. Why? I think I just want to mingle this with the points that Johanes Widodo has mentioned, that back to the basic, critical thinking. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Traveled a long distance. I won't say the opposite of you, but kind of, because I'm an American who was born in the United States, spent time outside, came to Indonesia 42 years ago, and got involved in heritage, married a Sudanese man. So I've been enmeshed here. And I've actually spent 42 years trying to unlearn critical thinking, unlearn linear thinking, unlearn things that I learned in the West in terms of my intellectual understanding and evolution. And I am now trying to grasp some of the nuances of, I won't say Indonesia because I don't know Indonesia. I know Bambang fairly well, but I can't claim that I know anything about the larger archipelago. I've become a citizen of this country, and I'm still confused by it. But that confusion is more spiritual than intellectual. Yes? Yes, I have tools that I learned in the West, linear thinking. I appreciate it. I usually go there quite quickly. But then I devolve to, no, wait a minute. It's not really linear that has been driving life force in this country, in this world, in this universe. It's really not critical thinking. It's a lot more intuitive. It's a lot more nuanced. And I've been trying to unlearn at the same time you've been trying to learn. And that's sort of interesting, isn't it? Thank you.
Yeah. But
I need to cut it first. Sorry. Because we're going to come back to that point later, but I would like the speaker have a chance to answer.
And three of this, because otherwise we forgot about Pak Wijaya. But all these three are interconnected, because Pak Wijaya asked the question, what should we do of this uncertainty? What kind of things that we can give to the next generations? And then you said critical thinking, you say no, unlearn critical thinking, right? But my answer, my position here is about education, is about pedagogy. How we teach our children, our students. And my position is, we have to change the term teaching with learning. So we work together with our students, bring them to the street, see the reality, do the mapping. Then together we sit down under a tree, under the shade of a tree, to find a wisdom, like Buddha, to make sense of it. So it's about to make sense. To make sense is not critical. Yes, it's critical, but sometimes you use both your left and right brain, and then ask them to make a position. There is no right or wrong, but at least you have a conviction. And then whether there is a consensus doesn't really matter, because you can agree to disagree. But everyone have individual take what to do. And this is the function of a teacher, not to spoon-feed them. So forget about this literature. Throw away all this book. Yes, it's good for reference, but go push them into the cold water of reality. Look into what poverty is all about. What is this climate change? And what can we do with this statue? Challenge them, and then we sit down. That is what I mean by democratic way of learning. So it's not teaching. So it means it's the reformations of the whole educational system and how we teach. We cannot wait under the curriculum change. It takes a long time and bureaucracy. Just start from your classroom. Drag the student out from the classroom, sit under the trees, refuse to use air conditions, switch off the lamp. Then understand what is comfort is, what is tropical climate is. Then you see, can you do without it? Will you change after you are experiencing this? So this transformation is what we need, actually. And I think this is the only thing that we can give our next generation, a survival kit. A flexibility to survive. It's not my problem anymore, I will die anyway. But they will continue to face the consequences of climate change and social injustice. But we cannot just let them become somebody who have no capability to make a decision and to make a problem solving. So teach them to do a problem solving. So in terms of eco-education, it is called change the project-based project into problem-based project. Choose from the classical teaching into blended learning system. Flip the classroom. And this is the reformations in education. I think that can combine both of this.
Yeah, we all are facing the uncertainties. And as lecturers, we also have to unlearn almost everything in dealing with the students of today. But I believe that what is important in this situation is not simply learning or unlearning critical thinking in terms of technical skill, but more on reflective capabilities, I guess. Questioning our basic beliefs, because if it is a matter of technical skill, we all have to update always the technical skill. But what is more important to me is developing reflective skill, questioning what is valuable and not valuable. It's not about right or wrong, but what is meaningful and not meaningful. I think that is basic, and how we are supposed to deal with the world. Is it enough that we keep complaining, being a victim of this gigantic power, or can we develop our own power to influence, the wider world? This reflective thinking, I guess, is more important. Yeah.
She sounds like Marxism, dialectic, but we always challenge, no, not necessary, right? Right? Because reflections is different from, say, dialectic. No, it's just to clarify.
Not dialectic, actually, but dialogical way of developing our reflective capacity. Dialogical is not dialectic. Okay?
I think very practice, in college we try to research on traditional arts and create a website for information about the areas we research to show how the results of Indonesian culture. I think it is important. We made a website about Bia culture, about Trusmi culture in Cirebon, and Boti or Bira. Bira is South is Sulawesi, and very important. And many story about Indonesian, ancient Indonesian, people must know about that. Yeah, often we are not confident to be ourselves, I think. The image of Indonesia as a colonial country that is lower and the West always appears. If we look at modern art originate from Asia, Africa, Australia, and even America, I think colonization success in making the colonies inferior. There must be pride in culture and use it for today life related to creativity and policy in life. We must break the image in our is lower than many
culture, I think.
Okay, thank you Wira, Pak JW dan Pak Bambang. We have a question from the Zoom chat, I believe. If you can just show it to the screen so I can read it. We still have like more or less 5 minutes. Oh, we have two? It seems not questions. Well, that's right, it's questions, yes. So the first one is from Ratih Mahardika. To all honorable speakers, if modernity is plural and grounded in rationality, how can we critically engage with the future under the influence of aesthetic capitalism, while not losing the historical and traditional foundations that give meaning to identity amidst contemporary crisis? And the second one is from Tintin Mulia. Thank you so much for the such thought-provoking keynotes and discussion. Thanks, Siki, for the invitation. I am an Indonesian, currently a senior researcher at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden, and have been a student of Pak JW since Pak JW taught in the university where Pak Bambang teaches now. I am interested to learn more from Bu Ira, Pak JW, and Pak Bambang. How could we think more about spirituality, especially in its complex connection with religion? What are the differences between spirituality and religion? What could be pitfalls, the pitfalls of in thinking about both, perhaps specifically when we think of the past and the present with artifacts of spirituality from the past which arrive to us often in form of religious artifacts? I believe this is like probably 7 questions.
Yes, about the religion and spirituality. Well, I take it this way. Religion is a matter of institution, huge institution with its formal credo and system, whereas spirituality is more mental disposition of our own. So I will say it this way. Religion teaches us how to see the world, while spirituality relies more on our own experiences of how to see the world and to look for meaningful life. So religion relies very much on the scripture and the founder, the system, institution, while spirituality relies more on our own experience, our own problems. Of course, today the two are intermingled. Religion is understood in terms of our own experience, and our own experience is shaped by the institution. Well, keep doing the dialogue between the two of them as far as it is possible. When it is not possible, just leave it. Leave one of it. Leave one of them. Yeah, but when Pak Wijaya talked about the uncertainties, the thing is, today, the uncertainties applies also to our religion. Religion as institution. Because, yeah, there are many. In the past, they talk about orthodoxy. Orthodoxy means pure teaching of a certain religion. Now, we are facing heterodoxy. There are many versions of being a Muslim, being a Christian, being a Buddhist, or whatsoever. There are many versions, and you have to decide for yourself, and in terms of your own experience, what to believe. That's it.
I just easy answer. It's to quote Romo Mangun again. We are not talking about religions, but we are talking about sense of religiosity. So this is what make people difference between atheist or free thinker. and somebody who have a fear. He have a sense of duty, sense of purpose. So the word is sense of religiosity. And talking about the institutions, I remember Bung Karno when he started the so-called discourse in Pancasila, right? So there's everything about Indonesia can be summarized into 5 sila. Believe in God, and so on, 5. But if I have to compress that into one word, what is the foundations of Indonesia but also to the world? It's called humanism. So I think human suffering, goodness, be kind to each other, is something to do that all religions believe in. So by subscribing to humanism and having the sense of religiosity, then I think there's no problem what kind of institution that you follow, what kind of rituals that you follow. Even I was moved with the Hindu celebrations this morning. I was moved sometimes to hear the sound of Azan, especially the Azan in Sawalunto. I always use this one, right? Because of that mosque is at the center of the valley, and the valley during Maghrib, when the sun starts to set, then the Azan that is sound from that minaret at the center of the valley, the entire valley is reflecting that sound. And that will move the feeling of whatever religions that you have. Right? This is a sense. And second is about traditions, right? The question is about traditions. Well, my answer is very simple. It's not just about tradition, it's about local wisdom. Just understand how the locals think about environment, how the locals think about social justice, how the local thinks about economic viability. And they have solutions throughout the history. And because they have these solutions, it's become wisdom and is applied locally, because you cannot just transfer from this to different contexts. So understanding context and then understanding what the wisdom that has been developed so far for these generations to face environmental problems, social problems, economic problems, so they can survive until today, that is the lessons that we can carry forward to the future generations.
Ini saya sambil lihat terjemahannya. In Indonesian culture, there is no distinction between spiritual and non-spiritual activity. All are aimed at achieving salvation. Art becomes a medium for achieving salvation. To achieve salvation, people must be in line with nature. In Indonesia, there is always acculturation and return to the uniqueness of the original Indonesian religion. All can be read from the artifact Panji. Panji is evidence of how the Indonesian people developed with the uniqueness of the Indonesian people. Panji is not only Hindu or Buddha, but Panji is a Indonesian culture, I think, and it is important to know. Every culture enters to Indonesia, and people in Indonesia will make to acculturation, inculturation to make a new culture is Indonesia.
Thank you so much, Bu Ira, Pak Bambang, Pak JW. And I think we need to end the day, call it a day, and could you please give some round of applause for our speakers, distinguished speakers. I think it's a very good starting point to rethink about our positions, to rethink about ideology, to rethink about the position, the relation between object, subject, and the way we see ourselves as part of this higher education institution, the idea of architectural, of arts and design, of cultures, and a lot of things. And that's why we will continue tomorrow. We still have two more days. The second day will be going to Second day will be tomorrow, where we have a round table. We have two round tables. It's going to start around 9 a.m. And I would like to invite you to come back to this. Going to be 10 in the morning. The first round table, and the second one is going to be around 1 p.m. In this room. And thank you so much. Please give another applause for our speakers, and we would like to see you again tomorrow. Thank you and good afternoon.
For the information about the roundtables, you can see from our Instagram account. Just go to @SIFAS-ITB. You can see the information, the details about the schedule.
Recording
about
stopped.
day 2 and 3 of the sessions. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Also, we still have refreshment. You can have and grab some coffee and tea. We still have that next door with all the small pastries. Yeah. Okay. Session tanggal 22, informasi. Topik Knowledge Gap Existence tanggal 22 April mulai jam 10. Speakersnya ada Profesor Dr. Yasir Kamil Pilihan. Second one Dr. Indah Widya Stuti. The third one Bliwili Himawan. And the last one is Bli Sugilanus for tomorrow. First roundtable in the morning. Scientific and political motifs. Ada ada Profesor Dr. Wijaya Martokusumo, Dr. Seli Riawati, Dr. Pangga Ardiansyah, dan Ahmad Zudi Alam.